is Amber Sotelo, and I'm going on my 12th year in remission. My journey began in the fall of 2008, and it was around my birthday in November, and I remember I had felt really bad pain in my pelvic area, and it wasn't like menstrual cramps, it was worse. But I've always had problems with my period, so I just thought, well, this is the same thing, abnormal periods. But the thing that had happened was I was actually menstruating for about a month. So my flow never stopped. I just kept bleeding every day. And by Christmas of '08, I still hadn't gone to a doctor, which I know was completely ignorant. But I just thought, well, it'll stop, it'll go away. But within that month from my birthday in November to December, I had started to turn pale. I was starting to lose weight. The pain was pretty bad. I couldn't ever sleep. I couldn't stand for long periods of time. And when Christmas had came around, I had some of my family members telling me that I looked bad and that I needed to go to the doctor. And so I'd promised them, well, I'll go after the holidays, just get past New Year's, and then I'll go to the doctor. And it was December 28th, and I was cooking some fajita burritos, and my dad had came over to pick him up some for work for the next day. And he told me that I looked really, really bad, and I was kind of spacing out. So he had asked me if he could take me to the hospital. So if my dad was so worried about it, I just said, yes, let's go. My pain at that time was really bad. It had brought me to tears quite a few times. So I just agreed for him to be able to take me. So I dropped off my baby, who was 2 at the time, to my mom, and my dad took me to Odessa to medical center. And the doctor that had saw me had ordered for some blood work to be taken. And then I had a vaginal sono, and he had said I had some growths on my uterus, but it was easy to be removed, just a D&C, a small procedure, and then a follow-up with my regular doctor after that. So we did the D&C, and I had followed up with my regular doctor, and she said everything had been removed, that if I had any more problems, how bad was I bleeding. So she had told me at that time that everything seemed fine. I was still bleeding some after the procedure, but she said that was normal and that it should let up. She asked about my pain, and she said that would also take time too for it to completely go away, because I had let it go for so long. She asked if anything else was wrong. And I had told her that by now I had realized that my chest had felt tight, that I didn't know if that was something related to it, or, why my breathing had changed. I felt like I couldn't take a deep breath. Well, she said maybe I needed to see my regular physician for if I was sick for some reason, maybe bronchitis, pneumonia, something like that. And that was it. So then I had went a few weeks, and I wasn't getting any better. My bleeding had completely reversed, and my pain was back to how bad it was. I still was really pale. I had no energy by this point, and my breathing had actually gotten worse, where I was so scared at night to go to sleep, just because I didn't know if I was going to not wake up because I hadn't kept breathing. So now it's January 22nd of 2009, and I go back to the ER. But this time I see a different doctor. His name was Dr. Henry Ramirez. And he actually admitted me, ordered the MRI, CAT scan, vaginal sono. I had to get my colon checked. A whole bunch of different stuff that the first doctor never attempted, never suggested, never anything. And my original doctor at that time, my OBGYN, never even said I needed to go get checked for anything further, or that she needed to do anything more extensive. So he ran all these tests, and he had came back to the room and he had told me what I had went through was a molar pregnancy, which I also didn't understand because I'd never heard of it. But then also, how could I have had some type of pregnancy because I was taking my birth control regularly? And he had told me that I had tumors on my uterus that they were going to be able to remove with the surgery, but it had metastasized and spread to my lungs, and 83% of my lungs were covered in tumors because I had waited so long to get anything done about it, which explained why I couldn't breathe half the time and why I never felt like I could catch my breath, but nobody looked into it further. And since my doctors kept putting it off like it was nothing serious, I just thought, well, it must just be in my head. So I never pursued it further until now, and here we are like 4 months later, and then I find out I had let it go too far. And how it metastasized and turned into cancer, he called it gestational trophoblastic disease, or GTD. So the tumors on my uterus, they removed with the surgery. I needed nothing further for that. All my treatment was just the tumors on my lungs. But nobody here in West Texas could treat me. It was so rare, nobody had any background on it. So on January 26th, which was my sister's birthday, which was crazy, they had sent me to Baylor in Dallas to do my chemo there. And they started me on Leucovor pills. I had to take shots, red blood cell shots, and I was only there for about 2 weeks because then they had worked with my doctors back here in West Texas to get my treatment plan set here so I could come back home. Well, that first week that I was there, my mom, dad, brother, and sister had went with me, of course. Well, they ended up getting sick with the flu, so they weren't even allowed in the hospital. And I mean, within reason, nobody need, any of the sick patients didn't need the flu on top of cancer. So they didn't get to come see me. They could only call my room. So it was scary, but I did have some aunts and uncles and a whole bunch of cousins, so many phone calls, and I was on prayer list and from churches from all over the place. So I was very taken care of, had a great support system. They just couldn't be there because of the flu. And so then we start my chemo treatments, and how the doctors had set it up was that it would be by cycles, and they originally only wanted me to do 4. So the first cycle was going to be 2 weeks, and each cycle contained 2 weeks. So the first week, from Monday through Friday, I would have 18-hour treatments, and so I'd be on the machine doing my chemo for 18 hours. Then the second week, Monday through Friday, I would do my treatments from 8 to 10 hours. So since I was there in the hospital, those first 2 weeks, I just stayed in the hospital the whole time. Then when I got to come back home, they had started out a plan for me where I would be at medical center that first week of my second cycle, Monday through Friday, and do my 18 hours each day that way. Then I get to go home on the weekend, and that next Monday for that second week of my second cycle, I would be at the cancer center, and I would do my treatments 8 to 10 hours there, and then get to go home each evening. So at this time, my mom had already quit her job to take care of me, but I had a 2-year-old at this time, and for him just to have to be around all of this, and I didn't really like for him having to go and sit for so many hours and not have anything to do. So she would rotate with my grandpa taking me to the cancer center on my other week. The week I was in the hospital, every day they came and visited me. Every day they made sure they brought me my favorite food or a drink or a slush or something, which half the time I didn't even eat because some of the side effects be nauseous and throw up, or my mouth was constantly broke out in these horrible sores, so it hurt to even talk. So I would never really want to eat. But I mean, I had a really good support system. If it wasn't for my family, I think I would have gone into depression. Even though there was times where I would always act like I was okay, or I would wait for them to leave and then I would cry, I wouldn't tell anybody, or like I would just try to hold it in because I would already see how scared they were, and I would see them crying, or I just didn't want to break down in front of them. So I remember one of my night nurses had told me that if I didn't start being truthful with my family about how I was doing, that she was going to tell them. And so I've told her, no, I'll tell them. I just, so then I'm telling her, I don't want them to know. I just want them to think everything's okay. So, and then that didn't last very long because my sister got a job at the hospital. And so every night she would sleep with me in my room on the little fold-out couch. And she would she stayed with me. If she worked 4 days in a row, she stayed there 4 days in a row. She showered there. She slept on that uncomfortable little couch, and which I loved it, but I know she probably didn't get the best night's sleep for that long. So then I get to my 4th week of treatment, and by now my hair's fallen out, and which I was pretty upset about that. And I had asked my doctor, is my hair going to fall out? Am I going to lose it? And he told me, everybody's different. Every chemo treatment's different. You might lose it. You might not. You might have some of your hair thin. You might keep all of it. So, but he did tell me if I was going to donate my hair, which it was down to my butt back then, that I needed to go ahead and cut it now, because as soon as it got any type of chemicals or medicine in it, that they couldn't actually use it. So I remember a friend of a friend had came to the hospital and cut my hair in a bob, the shortest it had probably ever been since I was born. And she cried with me because she had cut off so much. And then I got to donate it, so that was really good. But I lost my eyebrows, my eyelash. I lost all the hair on my body. And I tried to hold on to the hair that I had on my head for the longest. And I had remembered I had woke up one day. And by now I'm already living with my mom because I couldn't afford my bills. I wasn't working. And my hair had fallen out on my pillow, and I had woke up one morning. So I asked my dad and my brother, will y'all just shave off what's left? Because it was so patchy and thin, and it would fall out when the wind blew. So we laughed about it, and we shaved it all off, and then I was bald. But that really wasn't even bad for me. And then they felt so bad for me, they took me shopping for wigs, and I hated those things, but they spent so much money on them, so I wore them. But my family was the best support system I think anybody could have ever asked for. And so my 4th week came around, and I was supposed to not have to do, or my 4th cycle, and I wasn't supposed to have to do anymore. But some of my readings and testings the doctor didn't like, so I was ordered another cycle. So it was my 5th cycle, so it was 2 more weeks. And things started to get to where they wanted them to, but they hadn't leveled out completely, so then I had to do another cycle. So this is my 6th cycle, and I'm finishing it up, and they told me everything was okay. They did all my checks. They did CAT scans, MRIs, vaginal, everything that from the beginning, they followed through again. And they told me I was all clear, that they didn't count it as being cancer-free until I finished my shots. I had to go to the hospital every morning for a week after I had finished my 6th cycle. And they would give me shots in my stomach. And they would do it in, like, around my belly button. And it would be the, what is that called? On a, on a compass in the directions north, south, east, and west. And I would get shots like that around my stomach. And then the next day I'd go back and they would do like northeast, southwest. So they would do it all different. And the shots themselves didn't hurt too much, but they were pretty... They looked worse than what they were because they bruised up my stomach really, really awful. And neuropogen, I believe is how you say it, but that's the kind of shots that I had to get. And then I started, you know, I continued the red blood cell shots, and the leucovorin, I took those pills for quite a while. But let's see, I'm trying to figure out when my last day of chemo was. April 16th of 2008. So I started my chemo in December and finished by April. So it wasn't really that long, but it was very wearing. I think I had guilt because I felt like my dad had to take on me and my son financially. My mom had to quit her job to babysit me. I know they don't feel like that, and I know that they would never ask me to repay them, but I do feel guilt about that still. I think the hardest part was not being able to be a mom to my son. I missed out on a lot. Potty training, playing with him. I remember one time I was so weak, I couldn't even push a Hot Wheel car across the bed to play with him. But I make up for it now. I think if I needed to give any advice to anybody, it would just be to continue to pray and keep your faith. There's good in everything, even if you don't understand it. Always get your checkup. Don't think, oh, I can get it in a year. I can skip a year and then get it. No, you always go. Even when you have those underlying medical problems, you don't let anything go. Always go to the doctor. You don't know what's going on. You're not a doctor. You can't diagnose yourself. So you don't want to put yourself in a position that I did, where you put it off and it just completely blows up and you know something's wrong, but you still refuse to do anything about it. I think that cancer is ugly, but I am grateful for it because it made me be an advocate for health. I mean, I tell anybody and everybody, go to the doctor, go for your checkup. If you've never been, go. I'll take you. I'll go with you. Still now as a survivor, I have nightmares. I hate going to my checkup because I'm always thinking, what if? And a few years ago, I actually had some lumps in my breast. So that was terrifying too. It turned out not to be cancerous, but I mean, it's just, you always have things to check, because when I went into that doctor's appointment, I just thought, I don't have uterine cancer, I don't have lung cancer, never expected to have anything in my breast, and then there's lumps. So it's always important to just take care of yourself. And that's about it for my story. I'm going on to my 12th year in remission. So hopefully when this coronavirus is over, I can get back to the doctor and get my last checkup. But thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Hi, my name is Katie Tone and I'm a breast cancer survivor. I had a great support system when I was battling with cancer and deciding what kind of treatment I was going to take. I have my family and my family from church. They had it the hard thing when I find out about my cancer diagnosis was the decisions I needed to take, or the information they gave to you, and what if this happens? What if they happen? chemo, radiation, all those kind of treatments available. Something I would tell people is, advise them is to go every year, follow up with a doctor. It's not only breast cancer, it's many cancers. I work for a cancer institute, which we deal with different kind of cancer. So I suggest people to go to the doctor, do your treatment, stay focused, be positive. Positive is really important for you. That's the only I can tell people. I believe in Christ, so I believe that God do miracles, and I believe that God listens, and He does listen. Things that we can do on a daily basis to maintain ourselves motivated is by working out, by eating healthy, by spending time with your family. It's really important. I think that's a lesson that teach me going through this situation was family is there no matter what, and you need family. When you have family next to you, you recover faster. Making decisions how what is happening to your body is really hard as well. I was blessed not to have radiation or chemo, and that was very important because my cancer was phase 1, which is they cut it on time, you cure is a great percentage to be total cure. I just address to, there's a lot of people there that can help you, a lot of institutions that can help you, that can give you information. Battling cancer, reached out to friends, reached out to family, research and get all the information you need, so that way you can be having all that positive information. That's the only thing I have.
Hi, my name is Kathy Cornelius, and I am a cancer survivor. I've never really shared my story or talked about my experience, but I had a sweet young lady ask me if I would do that, so I agreed that I would. I was diagnosed with breast cancer 20 years ago. It was in 1999. I was taking a shower, and I felt a lump. And I remember, I'm not a negative person. I feel like I'm just a very realistic person, but the minute I felt that, in my mind I thought, this is bad, this is not good. And I remember we were getting ready to go to my husband's grandparents' anniversary, and I remember thinking, oh, I want to celebrate many anniversaries, to come. And anyway, long story short, I told my husband, and we immediately went to the doctor. We started with my gynecologist, and he sent us to have a mammogram. And one thing that I really appreciate is that very first doctor that I saw, he told me, if this is cancer, I don't want you to think of it as a death sentence. And he said they have made the most strides in breast cancer and in children's leukemia. And I walked out of that office and I said a little prayer, and I thought, this is bigger than me, God, and I'm just going to give it to you. And I trust you, and I know that you're in control, and whatever, however this turns out, it's going to be okay. Anyway, long story short, I went to have the mammogram, and once that was read by the radiologist, pretty much had he told us basically that he felt like it was cancer, but that we would need to have a biopsy. The radiologist, they sent the mammogram over to the first doctor that I went to, and when he looked at it, he felt as though it probably was cancer. and then I went to visit a surgeon. And when he looked at it, he felt as though it probably was cancer as well. So I pretty much, before I had a biopsy or anything, pretty much we knew what we were looking at. But anyway, we had the biopsy and had a lot of friends share, books and advice and different things. And basically the surgeon said that they could do a frozen section like test biopsy, and we could see fairly quickly if they felt like it was cancer or not. And of course there's that test that takes several days or weeks to get back more detailed, but that we could combine so that I wouldn't have to be put under more than once. We could combine possibly to go ahead and have either a lumpectomy or a mastectomy. And at that time, for the age I was 37, and for I think the kind that it was, and I hadn't been through menopause yet, but anyway, they recommended that it would probably be best just to have a lumpectomy. So time goes on, we have the surgery to have the lumpectomy, to have the biopsy done, and yes, they came out quickly and said, that yes, it was cancer, let's go ahead and do the lumpectomy. And that was really hard, I think, on my mom and friends and who I worked with, but that's what I was prepared for, and I was basically expecting it to be cancer. I knew that we would have a long road ahead of us, but my husband and I had talked, and we felt like after visiting with all of those doctors that they felt like it was cancer, so I felt like I was ready. They also took out, checked my lymph nodes and removed some of those, and the cancer was beginning to invade the lymph nodes, but not too bad. So pretty much, I would say, I think it was about 2 weeks or so after the lumpectomy, we went ahead and we started our chemotherapy. And basically my treatment plan would be chemotherapy, and then I think it was 7 weeks of radiation. And I guess chemo, the hardest part, one of the hardest parts about it all was that it made me so sick. They were having a trial study at the time, and there were people that were trying a new drug out, and then a drug that had been around, and I ended up with the drug that had been around, and so my husband said, you give it to her, you just whatever works, and it had good results with this. So anyway, long story short, the people in the study, their drug, it didn't make them so nauseated, but I was not so lucky. So my chemo definitely made me sick. That's something that I would not wish upon anyone. It's terrible. It's not fun to go through that. My experience was that I would be sick. Well, what we would do is we would schedule our chemo like on a Thursday or Friday so that I could have Saturday and Sunday and then take a couple of days off work. I'm a teacher, and so I really worked through this, except I would take a few days off when I had my treatments. And it would make me very sick, and about the 4th or 5th day I would start feeling a little bit better, and I would think, okay, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I would build back up until the next month it would be time to do it all over again and have another treatment. I would say at that time I had a great support system. Of course, I had my husband, who was incredible and took me to all my treatments and was here, and my mother would come out, and she basically asked me, how can I help you the most? What would help the most? And I said, just try to make my children's lives as normal as can be. Take them to school, cook dinner, read to them, take them wherever they need to go, whatever sport. If they want to have a friend over, that's fine. Just try to make their life as normal as can be. And I appreciate her so much for that, because it was awesome to have her. My daughter was in 2nd grade. I think it was really hard on her. And she slept in the same room with her, and she could visit with her and talk to her. I think she felt real loved. My boys I have twin sons, and they were in 6th grade. And I think it was probably equally hard for them as well. You just don't want a mom who's sick. And, you're very exhausted and drained, when you go through chemotherapy, much less just being so sick. And so that was hard. I think one of the hardest things about it, which I'm embarrassed to say because I think it feels vain, but when I lost all of my hair, that was really hard for me, and I'm kind of embarrassed about that, looking back on that, because it shouldn't matter, but it sure felt like it mattered at the time. And by the last chemo treatment, I had lost everything: eyebrows, eyelashes, everything. And by the last chemo, it didn't even really matter because I had a wig and I had cute little caps that people made for me. And, by then, I didn't even care. But the very first time that all my hair was gone and I had to go back to work and I had a wig, it was really hard to open those doors and, just to walk into the building and for people to see me. It didn't take very long to get over that, but I do remember, specifically remember my hair when it started falling out. I think it was about 14 days after I started the very first chemo. I was hoping that I would be that one person that didn't lose my hair, but I did. And it was just amazing to me how you could just, just barely kind of pull it and it would just come out. It was just incredible. And it would be, hair all over my pillow. And in hindsight now, I wished I had just shaved my head, but I was just hoping that maybe I would be that one person that wouldn't lose it or wouldn't lose it all. And of course I did. I did lose it all. And, through that experience, I had such a peace. Like I mentioned earlier, I do think it was hard for my children, and I think it was very hard for my husband and my mother to watch me, and friends, knowing that they couldn't do anything about it and they couldn't fix it. It was just something that we had to go through. It was just a struggle, a storm in our life, and it wasn't a fun one. It was hard, but very early on, I just thought, this is bigger than me, and I'm just gonna give it to God. And I just trusted that God's will would be done, no matter what the scenario looked like. I'm a Christian, and I love the Lord, so I knew that if I died, that I would go to heaven, and hopefully that's all our goal, is to get to heaven. I remember it was very hard trying to explain to a second grader. My daughter asked me one time if I was scared, and just more than anything, I just hated that she had to feel that way and had to experience worry, that I might not be around. And I told her that no, that I wasn't scared, and that I would be sad, to leave her and to leave our family and her brothers and their daddy. I'd be sad about that. But I told her from everything we had read in the Bible about what heaven was like, it would be spectacular, and that should all be our goal, is to want to be in heaven someday. So I feel like God just gave me a strength and a peace to get through that, and it helps me with my attitude. Even though chemo was difficult, and I was very sick, I was hoping surely one of these treatments I won't get so sick, but every one I did. And then when I started radiation, that was like 7 weeks every day, and I had such a great support group. Like I said, people would give me rides. The teacher signed up and they gave me rides. It was about 40 miles away, the cancer center was, and they would all take turns and give me a ride over and back and everything. But it's exhausting, and I remember they burned me, and that wasn't fun. So it's difficult, it's hard to go through, but the best advice that I could give is to have a very strong faith, and just to know and trust that God is in control, and He has the master plan, and we don't. And so just turn it over to Him and give it to Him. He's got control, and it's His will. He already has the plan for your life, so we don't even have to worry about it or think about it because He's got it. A good support group. I had friends from church, from school, just friends in general. I had, my family that would bring meals and take me to radiation or just whatever I needed. I had a really good friend. I love lipstick, and she brought me a tube of lipstick, and so many people did so many nice things. And I think people are good and they want to help. And I think just reach out, and if you need something, ask somebody, and let them help you. And then someday when you're better, you can do the same for someone else. It was an experience that I'm glad that it's over. But I think if you can keep a positive attitude throughout it, and just keep your faith, stay strong, and trust in the Lord, and then just have a good support system, I think that's the best way to deal with the experience of going through cancer diagnosis and treatment. I think probably the biggest takeaway that I have from the whole experience would probably be that I'm not in control, and just that God is, and just to trust your life with Him, and don't worry about why, because we're probably not going to understand why anyway. But anyway, I hope sharing my experience and my story helps someone out there. And I just pray that God will bless you, and that you know that He's in control. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joe, and I am 31 years old. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer back in May of 2014, where at the time I was 26 years old. My experience through that time was a bit of a blur. You don't think that you would ever get the diagnosis. You would never hear the C word per se. But luckily I had a great support group. I had my mom, my parents, aunts, cousins, and especially my wife, and I had a daughter at the time. She was 2 years old. That was my support group. Those were my shoulders to lean on. The treatment for it was an iodine based iodine 131 treatment pill that I had to take. That for me was the hardest because I had to be away for 7 days from my family, just because the iodine could affect their thyroid. The radiation that was coming off of the pill could harm their thyroid, and so I had to stay away for about 7 days. It was 7 days, from Tuesday to Tuesday. That was the hardest part. Leaving my child, leaving my wife, being home by myself. At the time thinking, this is it. I'm not gonna live past this. I'm gonna die, basically. That was the hardest part. I guess now thinking back, that experience right there, having cancer, it made me a stronger person. Prayer was what got me through it. Prayer and just being positive about it, and just trying to get it taken care of and move on. My advice I could give people is pray. Miracles happen. I've seen people go from stage 4 cancer to being cancer free after. So that right there is the power of God. And that's what I live by the whole time during my cancer treatment, and just trying to get over the whole shock, my body, the surgery because they took my whole thyroid. It wasn't just in one lobe, it was in both. And I mean, it was my first surgery I had ever had. And so that was scary. But, you know, after coming out of surgery, I felt a relief. Like I felt like, okay, it's out of my body instantly. I just felt that it was out of my body and I was going to do my treatment and be done with it. And that's basically a takeaway that I took from this is that it's life. Things are going to happen in life. So you just take it day by day when you're going through this kind of treatment, this kind of diagnosis. You just take it day by day. And just stay motivated. I mean, as a cancer patient, luckily my cancer is not as aggressive as others have now and have had. But it's something that basically you have a PTSD after going through all this. So just stay motivated, and just making sure that you love your family. They're there for you 100%. And prayer. It's a lot of prayer. And that's what I did. So thank you for asking me to participate in this questionnaire cancer experience, and thank you.